Every year, one thing is always predictable. Postage costs go up. Stamps.com gives you crazy discounts of up to 89% off USPS and UPS services, so your business will barely notice the change. Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses just like yours. It's like your own personal post office. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. Sign up with promo code PROGRAM for a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.
This is
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to welcome back to MIP, President of the National Bar Association, Attorney CK Hoffler is with us. CK, how you doing? Hope you and yours had a happy Thanksgiving.
I'm doing well. No, we had a great, quiet, and safe Thanksgiving. What about you, Mark? How was yours?
Same. We all have to be safe, so thankful for safety and grace and mercy, so all of that. Now, CK, we've been watching the news and the Secretary of State in Georgia, and he's pushing back against Donald Trump and stomping his foot. But now we find that even in the midst of that, they've been purging voters from the rolls in Georgia.
Well, yes. So, but this goes back. It's not just recent. It goes back to a period before even the presidential election. So in Georgia, we always have known that one classic form of voter suppression is purging voters from the rolls. That happens around the country. And we were aware of that. There were reports, Fair Fight and other groups had discovered that this was happening. Greg Palast, who, as you know, is an investigative reporter, basically did quite a bit of work in this area and was able to come up with some of the initial investigative research, which the lawyers and the legal team took with the expert, digested the information, and discovered that there are about 197,000, give or take, Georgians that have been improperly purged from the rolls, from the polls, related to them moving. So it really is a technical thing. I mean, a lot of people, when they went to vote, realized that they weren't registered to vote, and they thought they were registered to vote. They hadn't moved. They hadn't changed anything, and they were just purged from the polls. And so different organizations such as Transformative Justice Coalition, Black Voters Matter Fund, Rainbow Push Coalition, and other grassroots organizations that are in the field here in Georgia have been really sending postcards, going door to door to try to encourage people to vote. And that's how we discovered, because they're having to send cards and notify people that they've been purged from the polls. And that really is not the job of these organizations. It's the job of the Secretary of State. If you've been purged, you have to have notice. And so now they're doing notice. But before, when many of these people were purged, they weren't getting the appropriate notice.
So this purging has been going on before now. Does that mean that some of these voters were purged as recently as the November 3rd election?
We don't know if it was after the November 3rd election or right before, but it could have been because there were so many of them. I mean, 197,000, that's a lot of people. It is a lot of people.
And could make a significant difference. I mean,
absolutely.
Biden won Georgia by less than that.
Yes.
So to go to show you how many. So you, on behalf of the Rainbow Push Coalition and the NBA and the Transformative Justice Coalition, you have filed suit. Is that accurate?
So that's accurate in a sense, but let me broaden it a little bit.
Okay, please.
So Rainbow Push Coalition, Transformative Justice Coalition, Black Voters Matter Fund are the plaintiffs in this case. And Gerald Griggs and G.D. Myron out of New York were the initial attorneys to file suit. As I'm chair of the board of Rainbow Push, initially my involvement, my engagement, even though I intended to make an appearance in my individual capacity, was as the chair of Rainbow Push. So Rainbow Push is a plaintiff in this. But I today made an appearance as counsel of record and representing those three organizations in this. So Gerald Griggs, who is the lead local counsel here, is a National Bar Association lawyer. He's an MBA lawyer. So what's important here to note is that the NBA is leading this litigation, which could turn out to be some of the most important litigation in this election season as it relates to the runoff. Because what we are asking is for the Secretary of State to restore those people back to the registration. We want it to be restored. So we're asking for injunctive relief. And we do have a hearing actually that's been set for December 10th. Because no matter when, if it's restored, if it happens, those people would be eligible to vote.
So
that have been purged from the poll.
So you filed in court. This is in
it's in federal court, U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia, which is the Atlanta division.
So I find myself, I think they call it forum shopping these days when it comes to these courts. Is this a district, is this Northern District 1 that might be amenable to a case like this? Or is this a district that has Trump appointees, or what do we know about the court?
Well, what we know is that we have a fair judge. This is the judge that's providing over Fair Fight. Fair Fight has litigation as well. Good. So, you just never know when you file cases, who you're going to, the pick of the draw. And we have a fair judge. The judge has set a hearing. All we want is fairness. Let the Secretary of State prove that these voters were not purged illegally. They have the list like we have the list. We have the evidence like they have the evidence. We have an expert that's gone through, and because you can't just file a case like this without having the evidence. And I mean, if you want it to stick, I mean, some people certainly do, but we have. I'm just stating the facts. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, any group, because this is a nonpartisan effort.
Yes, ma'am.
We just want people in Georgia who have been purged from the voting polls to be restored, because it was not done appropriately. It wasn't done according to the National Voter Registration Act. Yeah. So it's a violation. So the Secretary of State made a statement some time ago that if people were purged just like this, it would take a few hours just to get them back. Okay, well, just like this, get them back.
Yeah, yeah.
If it pans out, of course, we're involved in a legal proceeding. We filed this in court. There's going to be a hearing, and we'll see what happens.
So folks, you see how CK did that very artfully without naming anybody, but they don't go to court without having evidence. Okay. So they know you're not going to worry about that in this situation. Having said that, CK, in a case like this, if the state of Georgia Secretary of State wanted to, couldn't they just settle and say, you know what, for the good of all, we're just going to go ahead and restore? They could do that if they wanted to, couldn't they?
Absolutely. I mean, they've got the ability to do that. They have the ability to research 197,000. That's a lot of people. But they had to have done some due diligence to make the determination these people needed to be purged. So they must have it in their system what they base that upon. We're saying it was done improperly, that the right lists weren't used, information wasn't correct. So if they believe that it was done correctly, so they should have the evidence to prove that. But in any event, we're in court. And this is just really about justice and democracy. People should have the right to vote, the ability to vote. They shouldn't just be purged unceremoniously without. There's some purgings that are correct. You move out of state. People die. There are reasons why people are purged and no longer registered to vote. Legitimate reasons. But what we're saying is there are about 197,000 that we believe are not for legitimate reasons based on the information and evidence that we have.
Now, if there's a hearing December 10th, that's clearly enough time for there to be a ruling or a settlement restoring those voters to the roll in time for them to vote in the runoffs, correct?
That is correct. Although, let me just tell you a little wrinkle. So in Georgia, the last day to register to vote is December 7th. Okay. But that's okay. This is the Secretary of State. We're in litigation. The judge can order. And remember, the Secretary of State that said, you can restore whatever. So the judge, and there's a whole process that we have outlined in our pleadings. This can be done before the election. It really can.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we filed now. There are a lot of procedural hoops that one had to jump through in terms of timing of filing it. And we have jumped through those procedural hoops, we believe, so that we're in strong footing. We're in strong footing with this litigation. At issue is the 197,000 people who could be disenfranchised voters, who could be stripped of their right to vote improperly. And that's not right. That's not what democracy is about. That's a nonpartisan issue, by the way. I feel pretty certain that there are Republicans and Democrats that are in that 197,000. The evidence that we have, since these are mostly in the counties surrounding the Atlanta metropolitan area, perhaps there are more Black and brown people. I don't know. We'll just have to see. But, this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue, quite frankly, that everyone should embrace. Why wouldn't you want people who are improperly purged from the polls to be restored, no matter who you are?
So how did we come about this information evidence? Voters were going to vote and were turned away. Is that what was happening?
That's part of it. That's part of it. I mean, there are groups that actively seek to fight voter suppression. And this is something that's not new in the world of voter suppression. There are a lot of states that do that. They just purge voters. So people try to vote and they're being turned away. But also when cards are sent, a lot of people didn't realize that they had been purged because we have access to the information and they didn't realize that they had been purged from the polls.
Okay. So some of them obviously would go and vote and then be shocked when they were turned away, I guess.
Well, that's why we have said from the beginning, check your voting status. Go to vote.org. There are a lot of sites. You can go to the Secretary of State site in Georgia and you can check your voting status. We've said that, but just think about this, Mark, for a second. In rural communities where there's no internet, there's not bandwidth, you don't have that. They may not even be aware. There are so many people in the state of Georgia that aren't really aware there's a runoff election.
Yeah.
If you don't have real access to the internet, if you're not following on CNN and all of that, what's going on, you're not keeping up on this. You knew there was a presidential election and a lot of people think, okay, I did it. I voted. I'm good. We're good.
Right.
And so having to re-educate our communities to make sure that they are aware so that they can exercise their right to vote if they choose to do so. That's what we're about. We just don't want anyone saying you can't vote and stripping them from that right where we think is illegally or improperly.
Were there any other issues that were used to justify the purging besides address changes?
I think it was primarily people who had moved, but I'm eager. I don't want to speak for the Secretary of State.
Gotcha. Okay.
But one of the issues was, people moving and some of the people didn't move, hadn't moved, who were purged. So I don't know what their answer to the complaint is going to be. There's going to be a hearing. And so we'll just have to see what the Secretary of State does and what type of justification is given from the Secretary of State.
So the Secretary of State, I say it's too early. They've not filed a response to your claim yet, have they?
Because we filed it yesterday.
So it's fresh and it's live.
And it's live.
Yeah. So folks, we're going to watch this very closely. And again, this is why the National Bar Association exists. This is why there is a collaboration between organizations like the Black Voters Matter Fund, Transformative Justice, and the Rainbow Push Coalition, of which CK Hoffler is the board chair. These types of collaborations exist so that we can stand up at moments like this and push back against some of this and be sure that as many people, and we all know how important this runoff is in Georgia. And CK, you're right. You can't discern how many Democrats were purged versus how many Republicans. And let's be honest. I mean, there are even groups, Roger Stone is running around telling Republicans not to vote, which, if we're going to be fair, when you do that, that's a form of voter suppression. So, for you,
we want everybody to vote. We want everybody to vote. Just vote. Right. Just have the right to vote.
Right.
We're not even telling you how to vote. We just want everyone to. That's why people died. So that's why there were marches. That's why there was a Voting Rights Act, so that Black people, brown people could vote. And so we're not going to sit by, not the National Bar Association, and allow that very precious right to vote to be stomped on, obliterated, taken, and stolen without a fight And we believe this is the fight. And we're fighting for everyone. That's the beauty of this, that you don't have to be a Democrat or Republican. You should want to ensure that anyone who's been improperly purged as a voter can be reinstated so that they can vote if they choose to do so. Well,
CK, this is great. Congratulations on doing this. I pray you win. We'll claim that victory. I'd like to think that the Secretary of State, who has actually shown a great deal of professionalism and judiciousness in the face of those without evidence, that they would show some responsible behavior in the face of this suit where evidence actually exists. So we hope for good faith, goodwill on that. I'm sure.
We do, and I'm claiming it. I'm claiming it for the voters of Georgia.
Amen.
If there are 2 voters that fall in this category, that's 2 voters too many. Everyone can have the right to vote. That's it.
Amen. Amen. She is the president of the National Bar Association, chairperson of the board of the Rainbow Push Coalition. A suit has been filed to reverse the purge that has taken place. And there are even some public service announcements that have been going on. Rosario Dawson has done one. Zoe Saldana has done one in Espanol. So people are being made aware. But folk, if you have loved ones in Georgia, this is a very important election. Holler at them, say, check now, make sure you are straight. I'll go to iwillvote.com, whatever you need to do, and make sure they're straight, they're ready. Because this thing is coming up a lot quicker than people thought. I mean, we just had November 3rd, and we're to turn right around and be sure folk were registered, as CK said, by December 7th.
By December 7th. Early voting starts December 14th.
Yeah.
Early voting. So after December 7th, it's over. That's why this litigation is so important. Whatever happens, and they can be restored. But for those who don't know, who aren't sure, just check. It takes so little to check.
Yeah.
Find out.
Please, ma'am. Please, sir. CK, we appreciate you. Thank you for all your hard work and standing up for all of us and defending all of our rights to vote. Okay, we thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to call you Rev.
Hey, that's fine.
I like to call you Rev because that's how I know you. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, CK Hoffler. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, subscribe, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.